Jake Landry, Public Policy Assistant at the International Health, Racquet, and Sports Club Association, otherwise known as IHRSA. Jake works in IHRSA's national headquarters in Boston, Massachusetts, and his public policy work has helped IHRSA succeed in building bipartisan healthcare policy, some of the things that we're going to discuss today. So really glad to have Jake join. Thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. These are our smiling faces. I'll remember to move slides. So a little bit about what we're doing today. We're going to share some strategies for building out a digital coalition that can mean the difference between passing a bill or not, particularly in this digital environment, but also moving forward. We're going to talk a little bit about IHRSA and the GIMS Act, how they grew a coalition, activating that coalition, and how they took advantage of our strategic dashboards. We'll be finishing up the webinar with a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions for Jake, please feel free to send them in the chat in the Q&A button. And we'll make sure to take some time at the end to answer them. For right now, let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so to answer questions about how to build an active digital coalition, we want to break down the strategies that Jake here used to garner widespread support for the GIMS Act, a $30 billion fund for businesses in the health and fitness industry affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Through the alliance, IHRSA built the National Health and Fitness Alliance, which we'll talk about a little bit later, a coalition of fitness industry professionals that includes fitness equipment manufacturers, gym franchises, and small boutique fitness studios. They were able to get a lot done. So Jake, thanks so much again for joining us. Just to kick it off, could you give us a quick rundown, talk to us a little bit about the GIMS Act and why it was important to IHRSA and kind of work you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got the GIMS Act introduced initially in the 116th Congress, kind of right at the midpoint of the kind of flurry of activity around the pandemic. And like many other businesses in like March 2020, gyms were shut down for safety reasons kind of across the country. And a lot of those gyms were shut down. It's varied, but between 6 and 8 months. And then a lot of gyms had to work with severe capacity restrictions, like 20 or 30% of their overall capacity, for up to like a year and 2 or 3 months after the pandemic. So a lot of, and obviously gyms are not able to really get members in the door, kind of have any membership model or make any money when they can't get people physically in their location. They, like, as compared to restaurants that can do takeout or online ordering, you can't really do online ordering or takeout for a gym. You need the equipment that's there to get the work done. So really we saw the need of, these gyms need help and they need some economic stimulus that really need to get back on their feet. And then we saw that a lot of other industries that were similarly shut down got relief in the various relief packages that were put through Congress. So restaurants got the Restaurants Act, live venues got the Save Our Stages Act, and it was a very similar bill set up like the GIMS Act, which created this kind of bailout fund basically for these companies. But gyms didn't get anything. And gyms were also kind of left out of PPP because a lot of gym employees are part-time employees, and PPP did not give gyms a waiver for full-time equivalents. So PPP was not a very helpful package for us either. So really there was just this great kind of need in the industry, and we were excluded from a lot of relief packages that led us to introduce the GIMS Act. Awesome.
Speaking of which, let's take a look at just some of the specifics of the GIMS Act. I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about sort of that reaction about the GIMS Act. And, you mentioned specifically what it is, but curious about, when it was again presented at the start of this 117th Congress, what did you decide to do differently? What was the new approach?
Yeah, so the new approach with us with the 117th Congress was just kind of expanding our grassroots base, because we've got a lot of kind of feedback with meetings with members of Congress in the 116th Congress that this is great, we see the need for this, but we need you guys to do more, because Congress was really kind of averse to picking winners and losers during the crisis. Everyone was hurting. There was a lot of need kind of everywhere. And Congress really made it clear that they needed us to kind of get our troops in order and really scream as loud as possible that we need some help. So I think that was kind of a really big change moving to the 117th Congress that we were focused on.
Yeah, that's something a lot of our clients have seen in the past years, just looking for new people to raise their voices beyond just those of us in Washington or kind of in the industry. It's really nice to grow in the coalition. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about getting those new people in the door. How did you find those relevant stakeholders outside of your member base for outreach?
So we really kind of looked at our member base, which is health clubs and gyms in the United States and abroad, but obviously for the GYMS Act, it's specifically United States people. And we looked at that was only a small subset of the health and fitness industry. There are so many other components, whether it be the suppliers that are providing the equipment that is being used in gyms, whether it be small boutique studios like yoga studios or like a SoulCycle, whether it be the landlords that are literally getting rent from these gyms that are paying the rent every month to like have and drive foot traffic and their kind of shopping plazas. So we really wanted to focus on creating the NHFA to grow our coalition outside of just our stakeholder members and really bring in anybody that had any interest in these businesses succeeding to kind of unite with one voice to speak to Congress.
Got it. And something that, well, on this slide here, talking a little bit about the National Health and Fitness Alliance in particular, but I imagine a question that's going through a lot of the listeners' heads right now is, you talked about specific examples for IHRSA and what kind of stakeholders that you might not have originally thought about that you wanted to reach out to. Do you have any advice for like what that process looked like in terms of figuring out these new groups that might be applied to other folks in other industries who might have having these same thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So our process was really kind of driven through our members. We just spent a lot of time talking to our members and saying, who do you interact with on a daily basis that we wouldn't necessarily think of that your business impacts, whether it be your own members or again, like the landlords you're paying money to or the suppliers you're working with. It's really just kind of putting it on them to propose the question. And we had these large kind of Zoom meetings with a lot of our stakeholders. I just had some really candid conversations and said, look, we are trying to help get you all money that you really need to survive. People rely on you in ways that you wouldn't necessarily think of off the top of your head, but who are those kind of like second tier groups of people that we wouldn't normally think of contacting that really need to be talked to? So really the members were kind of the driving force behind that and gave us a lot of good ideas.
That's great to hear. And sounds like another kind of, we're always looking for strategies to reach out to members, especially in the trade association space for, important reasons where they can feel involved and feel like a part of the team. And this sounds like a great one. So great. So once you pulled these folks in, talk a little bit about how you got them engaged in the campaign. What was the strategy?
Yeah, so once we kind of we expanded our base and got people engaged in the campaign, we developed the kind of GYMS Act dashboard through the Quorum Dashboards feature, which was really just kind of the key weapon in our arsenal, so to speak, for lobbying on the GYMS Act in the 117th Congress, because the dashboard really brought it all together to put all of our kind of advocacy efforts into one place. We kind of kept using the phrase one-stop shopping for everybody. So we went around to, me and the rest of the government relations team at IHRSA went around to kind of a bunch of different like fitness executives, whether it be suppliers or gym owner executives or big franchises that weren't necessarily parts of IHRSA, and presented the dashboard and the GYMS Act to a lot of their board of directors or their executives. And really just, it was a pretty easy sell because we walked in the door and said, hey, we're trying to get you money, but we need you to really help us out here and kind of do your part. And the dashboard was just an incredible tool in that it put everything really right in perspective. And it was auto updating. So I didn't even have to create new notes going to these meetings. I could just pull up the dashboard and present that. It's not like you had to work on a slide deck every time. It was very easy to show that these auto updating numbers would just continue going, and we could crank out many meetings with many people and get as many people on board as possible. Yeah,
definitely. And I can imagine it's also helpful to be able to leave them with an external link if you wanted, so that they can check back in later, that sort of thing. So that's great. So, we can see the dashboard.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that we kind of left the external link with everybody, every kind of meeting we had, and said, check back here if you want to do more, follow the progress of the bill, or kind of have any links to any grassroots advocacy. It's all there, and it's all very easy because these people are trying to run their own businesses, and their focus isn't immediately on government relations. So we try to make it really as simple as possible for them.
Awesome. So in addition to the dashboard, which clearly seems helpful for these meetings, kind of drumming up support, was there any other preparation that you found particularly valuable in winning over support that might be, helpful for other folks who are listening?
I would say something that we found really kind of helpful, and it was specific to our industry where we got the idea, but it could be applied to really any industry, is that gym owners are kind of naturally competitive people because they're obviously kind of into sports and athleticism and really want to be the best they can possibly be and work on themselves. So we broke down the race for co-sponsors essentially into different states and said, okay, New Jersey, can you get more co-sponsors more quickly than Illinois? And California, can you get more co-sponsors more quickly than New York? And we were able to really use the dashboard to break it down by grassroots actions sent by state. We were able to put it on a map that was color coded, and we were able to really show also co-sponsors by state. And that competitiveness really kind of was the hook and got a lot of people involved. And a lot of people were really excited about getting involved, which is not something we've seen in the past.
Got it. That's fantastic to hear. And the competitive side of things with kind of gamifying any sort of engagement is something that we've seen really helpful across the industry. So for those folks who weren't, let's say, as fired up to jump right in the pool and get involved, like what are some of the other follow-up methods used that were effective for getting buy-in from folks participating in this program?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the follow-up messaging I would just say, first of all, was persistence. Kind of the more that we talked to the coalition, the more kind of excited that they got, and just following up and really kind of making it a personal responsibility. So we had these weekly calls where we created what we called state alliances. We're really just kind of state captains, so to speak, in each state that were on a call with us once a week. And it wasn't so much as shaming states that weren't doing as well, but it was definitely a little bit of a competitive factor that maybe they weren't initially bought in, but when they see other states doing so well and getting talked about and shown as successful kind of advocates for the fitness industry on the dashboard, it was really kind of some positive peer pressure that got people off the sidelines.
Everyone needs a little push. Awesome. Okay, so we talked a little bit about building this coalition. I want to dive in now to the actual advocacy efforts. So when an advocate came to the NHFA dashboard, what are some of the actions you're calling on these coalition members to take?
Yeah, absolutely. So we broke our kind of advocacy actions into 3 different levels. So first the first level, kind of most easiest, was a one-click campaign, which we also ran through Quorum's grassroots campaigns feature. And that was the classic, they log on, put in their name, email address, and physical address, get matched up with the members of Congress, and send a pre-written letter in 2 clicks that autopilots all their information. So that was kind of the first level we got there. And then on the thank you page, after people finished that campaign, we linked to another campaign that said, hey, are you interested in doing any more? Kind of raise your hand, and if you want to move to the next level of advocacy. Then we set up an automated email that sent an email back through Quorum to those people who raised their hands they wanted the next level of advocacy, and gave them personal contacts for members of Congress, chief of staffs, and just like legislative aides, and phone numbers for the congressional office, and says, hey, you guys should write a personalized email, not from a template, that was going to go directly to these staffers' inboxes. That kind of gets the JIMS Act on their radar. And then if you really want to take even more action, a phone call is always going to be the most impactful and get things moving in Congress. So really that 3 kind of tiered system was good for us because we could easily place advocates in one of the 3 tiers. It was easy to look at, okay, we have X number of advocates in tier 1. Let's see if we can move some more up to tier 2 and 3 and so on.
Awesome. And it seems like it worked. So if y'all can see in the bottom right-hand side of the screen, since launching the NHFA in February 2021, they have over 34,000 emails that have been sent to Congress. And there's been some results. 131 co-sponsors signed onto the bill in the House and 2 in the Senate. So it's clear you've had a lot of success, at least based off just those numbers alone, in building the NHFA very quickly. Talk to me a little about reporting on the progress of the coalition and back to the association. What did that look like? What were the best ways of doing that?
Yeah, and I think the reporting is just made really incredibly easy by the dashboards feature, because as I alluded to a little earlier, it's all auto updating. So we would give reports on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, but then also the reports were always at people's fingertips. They never didn't have access to the data. They could just log onto the dashboard and see how it was doing. Yeah. And that really helped us in kind of getting momentum moving when we said, okay, you can see that top line number on the dashboard. That's 131 co-sponsors. We need that number to keep climbing by as many as possible every week. And it was really kind of a very easy way to report back, in that we could just show them exactly what the data was in real time. And it was never having to take time to make reports when we're all busy trying to do a million other things to get this bill passed.
Yeah, this is honestly music to my and our ears at Quorum, because exactly why we built out this dashboards tool to answer that kind of question. Why do I have to pull reports every single week? We know reports can take up a lot of time. So that's one of the great parts about dashboards. For those listening, they can create both qualitative and quantitative reports on the advocacy activity. And you can share that report really easily with internal stakeholders, as well as coalition partners. It doesn't just have to be those folks who are logged into Quorum. You can provide an external link to people who should see that information. Let's talk a little bit about building that dashboard. So, strategic dashboard design and what that looked like. You've included many different forms of data visualization in your dashboard for advocacy progress, including color-coded maps showing activity by states, and different bar graphs to kind of make it clear where the impact is being had. Are there any strategies that you should consider when building an external advocacy dashboard that you might want to share?
Yeah, I would just say I would kind of harken back a little bit to the competition factor that I was discussing earlier, and that these graphs that you're showing on the screen now were really the three kind of big graphs focusing on the competition factor that we wanted to thread throughout the dashboard. And we specifically chose to not put them all together. They're a little separated physically on the dashboard because they're really kind of eye-catching and draw people's eyes and make people kind of take in all the information. And again, they're all auto-updating. So these are great reporting tools and great graphs to show that we don't necessarily have to touch up and update every time. People, if you're an advocate in Illinois and you know that meeting is coming up where you have to face all the other advocates that we're going to talk to, and you can see that your state is maybe behind and not doing so well on the grassroots campaigns and actions taken, you're going to want to take more actions and want to spur more people on to take action. And we really found that it was helpful to initiate that competition and responsibility factor because it helped us get more advocates involved.
Did you do any proactive, in addition to sharing the dashboard, did you do any proactive email outreach to spur people on to kind of spur on that kind of state competition?
Yeah, absolutely. So about roughly once a month since February, we've sent out just kind of a big email blast to everybody that participated in our one-click campaigns, which, as you showed earlier, was about 34,000 people. Just kind of updating them on what's happening if they don't know to check back on the dashboard or have a million other things going on and have stopped thinking about it. So we really sent that email blast out to say, hey, here's what's going on. Here's where we need more help. Here's what you specifically can do. And Quorum also really made that really easy with the placeholders and emails and being able to kind of personalizing the emails and inserting members of Congress's names individually and their phone numbers and contact information. So we didn't have to send an email for New York and an email for Pennsylvania. We could just kind of set it all up and click send and get it all out.
Awesome. That's so glad. As someone who's worked with the grassroots tool and kind of seen these dashboards blossom, I'm really glad to hear that this has been helpful. So, and here, one of the other parts of it, I'm curious about when it comes to adding sort of organizational strategies when considering the broader organization, what were some of those things that you thought about when building out this advocacy dashboard?
Yeah, so because kind of in terms of the broader organization, we really tried to make the dashboard accessible for everybody. So if they were someone who was very experienced in weighing in on just kind of the government affairs or public affairs in general, they could still get a lot out of the dashboard because they could get there, see the information they needed, and take action very quickly. But then we also were able to include, through the custom text boxes, really a lot of information and a lot of links to educational materials around the GYMS Act. So if this is someone who maybe is a member of a gym or health club that has really never done anything besides voting in terms of interacting with the government before, we could give them talking points and bill language and bill summary and a lot of information on where we were and how we got here, and really make it that one-stop shop and really accessible for whoever wanted to take action on the GYMS Act and not just kind of an opaque tool that you had to have experience on how to use.
Awesome. Yeah. Here's some of those examples of information that we were just talking about, text boxes that lay it all out. This is all really great to see. Awesome. So throughout the coalition building process, Quorum, we were really on our end, we're really happy to be able to help Jake stay organized and update on the status of the GYMS Act. And this allowed him to rededicate his freed up time to present more to industry leaders and build a broader coalition. And as I'm sure Jake would agree, out of this, URSA saw the power of advocacy can have, and decided to make it a more core tenet of the association. So the external use of this dashboard feature has resulted in incredible momentum in the GYMS Act. And we're really excited to continue to watch it, make its way through Congress. Any other last things you might want to add, Jake, about, this process?
Yeah, I would just add that kind of a big change for us from the JIMS Act in the 116th Congress to the 117th Congress was really kind of adapting to the digital. We kind of got pushed into the digital age and the Zoom age of COVID, basically. And while we were still trying to use some of our old-fashioned, so to speak, ideas in the 116th Congress, we really kind of jumped in with both feet starting in 2021 with the dashboards, with kind of using Quorum Outbox and Quorum grassroots campaign software to really kind of be more data-driven and really focused on that technology aspect that wasn't necessarily lacking before, but we weren't using it to the full advantage. And we needed a little push from COVID-19, but it definitely paid off in the end.
Yeah, I think everyone kind of jumping in the deep end a little bit with the digital tools, and hopefully for most went out really well. And we're glad to hear it went well for you all. Awesome. Okay, so this is a big part of what we're doing at Quorum is trying to help people use tools to make communication easy, make taking action easy. It's a big part of what we're doing. Okay, so I want to jump now to open the floor to any questions from viewers. So if you have any questions for Jake about the process or about anything at all, really, pop into the Q&A box and we'll make sure to address it now. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so we have one here for Jake. So the question is, how have the legislative dynamics differed between your lobbying efforts and your advocacy efforts?
Yeah, so I think the legislative dynamics really have been different in that in terms of our advocacy efforts, we've really been able to focus on kind of like that groundswell of grassroots support versus the lobbying efforts were really more of a kind of back rooms, like sitting and talking and trying to get a deal hammered out. And the grassroots support was really much more effective that we found. So we found it incredibly helpful to be able to go into a meeting with a member of Congress and say, hey, there are 700 individual unique people in your district that want this bill passed and taking the time out of their day to complete this campaign and write to you and say they want this bill passed. So as much as the need was already there and the lobbying efforts and we're having these conversations with members of Congress, what really put us over the top and helped us get so many of those co-sponsors added on was the kind of groundswell of grassroots support for sure.
Awesome. And I'm curious, like, was there a particular medium, having these folks ready to go is great. And all these actions are really impactful, I'm sure, but is there one in particular that you all were surprised by, be it through email, calls, social media, that was effective in getting co-sponsors either in conversation or actually kind of on board?
Yeah, we found it really effective that I talked about a little bit earlier, the second tier kind of grassroots outreach we had, where we had our advocates directly emailing staffers' emails. So the kind of the one-click campaign is great, and that shows a lot of support. But we found a lot of help in kind of making direct contact with a staffer that gets the JIMS Act on somebody's radar, and then that kind of gives them an email that they have to deal with, and that will then move it up the chain. And that was really kind of the most effective way that we get a lot of co-sponsors signed on.
And a quick follow-up there, did you get any pushback from staffers with that sort of direct outreach? Were they ever kind of frustrated to get reached out in that way, or was all good?
No, not really. I'd say the only negative reaction we got is sometimes just no response, but I mean, that happens. They're as busy as we are, if not more busy, but I don't think we ever got really any negative reaction. They're really kind of excited to talk to a constituent that's in their district and kind of help them out, because really there was this huge demonstrated need the whole time due to the pandemic. So it was never a very hostile issue. It was more, how can we make this work for everybody?
Got it. All right, we have another question from participants. Beyond the dashboard, did you have a data sharing agreement with the other organizations in your coalition to ensure that all organizations sent advocates to your action center to participate in the campaigns?
So no, we actually did it in a kind of a very ad hoc manner. We're working directly with the Community Gyms Coalition. They are a coalition that started up during COVID to also kind of push for relief for the gyms industry. And they have their own grassroots software that they're using and running things through. And we work with them very closely and speak with them kind of on a daily basis, but there was really no formal data sharing agreement. We just all kind of have been working together in a pretty ad hoc way and directing people on our end, at least, towards our dashboard.
Got it. Got it. And then in terms of the NHFA, what are the future plans for that organization, the coalition that you've built? Are you planning to activate it again anytime soon? Any kind of changes to it?
Yeah, so we're really excited.
That you can share.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited about the NHFA. This is kind of really COVID presented our organization with an opportunity really to kind of pivot to a much more government relations focus, and the NHFA has really kind of proven itself to be a very powerful coalition. So I'm not sure if there's anything that I can share specifically, but we are definitely looking to keep the NHFA around a long time to speak as a unified voice for the industry and help us kind of get our feet on the ground even more in Washington.
Awesome. Well, unless we have any last questions, I think we can wrap this up right about now. If you have any last ones, get them in now. I think we're good. Okay. Well, Jake, thank you again so much for talking to us about this program. We're really excited to kind of see where it goes and really proud to have helped out over here at Quorum. So we hope folks have enjoyed this webinar. As you can see, Jake and other organizations like his are using Quorum to build strong coalitions and the dashboards themselves as the headquarters. So if anything that we talked about today, you want to talk about it in your team's toolkit when it comes to Quorum for championing key industry bills or kind of building coalition, getting grassroots advocacy, please reach out and request a demo. Reach out at quorum.us, go to our website, or send us an email at info@quorum.us. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you'll join for future webinars.